The 1982 World Series was the championship series of Major League Baseball's 1982 season. The 79th edition of the World Series. It was a best-of-7 playoff played between the National League champion St. Louis Cardinals and the American League champion Milwaukee Brewers. The Cardinals won the series, 4-3. The Cardinals had last been in the World Series in 1968. The Milwaukee team, the Braves, had last contended in 1958. The Milwaukee team of 1982 started as an expansion team, the Seattle Pilots, in 1969, which then moved to Milwaukee in 1970 and changed their name to the Brewers. The Cardinals made it to the series by winning the NL East Division by 3 games over the Philadelphia Phillies, and then defeating the Atlanta Braves, 3-0, in the NL Championship Series. The Brewers made it by winning the AL East Division by 1 game over the Baltimore Orioles, and then defeating the California Angels, 3-2, in the AL Championship Series. This is the Brewers' only World Series appearance to date. The Cardinals' victory helped the National League win 4 straight World Series from 1979 to 1982, the longest streak of consecutive titles by the National League in World Series history. The National League would not again win consecutive titles until the 2010 Giants, the 2011 Cardinals and the 2012 Giants. Though the teams had never met before, their home cities had a commercial rivalry in the beer market, as St. Louis is the home of Anheuser-Busch, which owned the Cardinals at the time, while Milwaukee is the home of Miller Brewing and other past major competitors of Anheuser-Busch. This led the media to refer to the series as the Sub-Series. The 1982 Milwaukee Brewers hit 216 home runs during the regular season, thus earning them the nickname Harvey's Wallbangers, after manager Harvey Kuhn. In sharp contrast, the 82 St. Louis Cardinals only hit 67 home runs, fewer than the Brewers, Gorman Thomas with 39 homers and Ben Oglivie with 34 homers combined. The Cardinals had built their reputation and won their division behind solid pitching, exceptional defense, and aggressive base running, manufacturing runs in a style that would come to be called white ball, named for team manager Whitey Herzog. This style would be the hallmark of the Cardinals through the 80s and see them into 2 more World Series in 85 and 87, both of which they lost in 7 games. The Brewers and Cardinals each boasted a dominant closer, with veteran Rollie Fingers holding the role for Milwaukee and Bruce Sutter for St. Louis. Fingers did not pitch in this series, which would have been his 4th, due to a muscle tear in his arm. The 2 teams had made a trade in December 1980 that was expected to benefit both clubs. Milwaukee traded pitchers Dave LaPointe and Larry Sorensen and outfielders Sixto Lezcano and David Green to the Cardinals, with pitcher Pete Vukovich and catcher Ted Simmons comprising 2/3 of St. Louis' return. The Cardinals built their team on speed, clutch hitting and pitching. The Cardinals made additional trades for Willie McGee, Ozzie Smith, George Hendrick, Buchanan and Jar, and Sutter, all designed to craft a well-balanced championship-level team. The Brewers combined a productive farm system with additional trades as well to build their heavy-hitting ball club. Thomas, Moose Hoss, Robin Yount, and Paul Molitor came through the system, while the aforementioned Vukovich, Simmons, Fingers, and Oglivie, plus Cecil Cooper and Don Money, all arrived via the trade route. On June 1st, with the team 23-24 and floundering in 5th place, Brewer GM Harry Dalton replaced manager Buck Rogers with Harvey Kuhn. The Brewers responded by winning at a 6-26 clip the rest of the way, taking 1st place for good on July 31st and never looking back. The Brewers' left-hander Mike Caldwell pitched a complete game shutout, allowing only 3 hits. The Brewers' offense was led by Paul Molitor, who had a World Series record 5 hits and 2 RBIs. Robin Yount added 4 hits and 2 RBIs. The Brewers went up 2-0 in the first when Cardinals' first baseman Keith Hernandez's error on Ben Oglivie ground ball with 2 on scored a run. Then Gorman Thomas's RBI single scored another. Charlie Moore doubled to lead off the 4th and scored on Molitor's single while Ted Simmons homered next inning. Cardinals starter Bob Forsch allowed consecutive 2-out singles to Jim Gantner and Molitor in the 6th before both scored on Yount's double and knocked Forsch out of the game. In the 9th, Oglivie walked with 1 out off of Dave LaPointe, moved to second on a ground out, and scored on Don Money's single. Jeff Lottie relieved LaPointe and allowed a single to Moore. Gantner's triple then scored 2 before Gantner himself scored on Molitor's single to cap the scoring at 10-0. This was their last postseason win on the road until October 13, 2011, also against the St. Louis Cardinals. The Brew Crew drew first blood in the second with an RBI double by Charlie Moore. They followed that in the third when Paul Molitor singled, stole second, went to third on the wild pitch by Cardinals starter John Stupor, and scored on a Robin Yount ground out. Ted Simmons stretched the lead to 3-0 with his second homer in 2 games. The Cardinals scratched back in their half of the third when rookie Willie McGee singled, stole second, and scored on a Tom Hare double. Ken Oberkfell singled in Hare to cut the Brewer lead to 3-2. The Brewers made it 4-2 in the fifth when Yount doubled and Cecil Cooper singled him in. Darrell Porter tied it in the sixth by doubling in 2 runs. Then, in the bottom of the eighth, the Brewers felt the effects of not having Rollie Fingers in the bullpen. With 1 out, Pete Ladd pressed into service as the closer, walked Lonnie Smith with 2 on to load the bases and then walked pinch hitter Steve Braun to force in the go-ahead run. The Cardinals could have made it worse, but McGee lined out to short for out number 2, and an apparent base hit by Ozzie Smith struck Braun as he was running to second for the 3rd out. Bruce Sutter pitched the 9th and got credit for the win. Longtime American League umpire Bill Haller called his final game behind home plate in this contest. He also was the last umpire to wear a tie on the field, and the last to work home plate in the World Series wearing the balloon-style outside chest protector. Walker-N and Jar and Pete Vukovich, each team's pitching aces, were locked in a scoreless pitching duel until the top half of the 5th, when Willie McGee belted a 3-run homer for the Cards. The Redbirds added 2 more in the 7th off Vukovich. Lonnie Smith doubled to right center and tried to stretch it to triple. Smith scored when Jim Gantner's relay throw to third went wild. McGee followed with a home run later in the inning, his second. McGee also had a couple of defensive gems, running down a deep Paul Molitor drive in the first and robbing Gorman Thomas of the home run in the 9th. In the 7th with 1 out, and Jar had to leave the game when a line drive from Ted Simmons struck his kneecap. The Brewers loaded the bases in that inning, but ace reliever Bruce Sutter got the final out to squelch a threat. Cecil Cooper accounted for the Brewers' only runs with a 2-run homer in the 8th off Sutter, while Ozzie Smith drove in the Cardinals' final run with a walk. Sutter qualified for the save in this game even though the Cards had a 5-0 lead when he entered the game, since he entered with the bases loaded, meaning the potential tying run was on deck.
Game 4 of the '82 World Series pitted Dave LaPointe against Moose Haas. Haas was a veteran of 6 major league campaigns while LaPointe had just completed his first full season. For 6 innings, the Cardinals seemed on the verge of taking a commanding 3-1 series lead. Dave LaPointe held the Brewers to 3 hits in that time span, while his hitters plated him a 5-1 lead. In the top of the first inning, Ken Oberkfell doubled down the right field line and George Hendrick hit a high chopper over the middle which handcuffed Yount and bounced into center field, allowing Oberkfell to score. In the bottom of the first, Oberkfell dropped a barehanded grounder from Yount. Both teams had trouble at times fielding, and the Brewers' errors in Game 3 may have cost them 3 runs. 2 Cardinal runs came in the second on an unusual way. With Willie McGee on first and attempting to steal, Brewers catcher Ted Simmons took a pitch out but bobbled the ball allowing McGee to steal second. After a walk to Ozzie Smith, Moose Haas' wild pitch moved McGee to third and Smith to second. Tommy Hare hit a deep fly. McGee scored easily and Smith took advantage of center fielder Gorman Thomas slipping and falling on the warning track and never stopped, scoring behind McGee for a 2-run sacrifice fly for Hare. Ken Oberkfell followed with a walk, stole second and came home when a Keith Hernandez grounder went through Gantner's legs. The Cardinals scored 3 times despite only 1 base hit. In the Brewers' half of the 5th, with none out and runners at first and third, Ozzie Smith made one of his famous Wizard of Oz plays. Gantner hit a ground ball through the middle towards center field. Smith, though off balance, stabbed at the ball while simultaneously stepping on second base, recovered and fired to first to double up Gantner. In the 7th, things fell apart. With 1 out, Oglivie reached first when first baseman Keith Hernandez's toss to LaPointe was dropped. LaPointe was relieved by Doug Bear after giving up a 2-out RBI and earned double to Gantner. Before relieved by Jim Cott, Bear walked Molitor and gave up a bases loaded 2-run both and earned single to Yount. An RBI single by Cecil Cooper and a wild pitch brought in the 4th Cardinals pitcher, Jeff Lottie. Lottie intentionally walked charge to Cott Simmons and gave up another bases loaded 2-run single to Thomas. Lottie issued another intentional walk to Oglivie, then induced a fly out to left field to end this inning. In this inning, 6 runs re-earned crossed the plate for the Brewers on 5 hits and 1 error. Mike Caldwell pitched his second win of the series and almost went the distance. The Brewers struck first on Ted Simmons' bases loaded ground out in the first off of Bob Forsch, but the Cardinals tied the game in the third on Keith Hernandez's RBI double. The Brewers took a 2-1 lead in the bottom half on Cecil Cooper's ground out with runners on first and third, and added to their lead on Paul Molitor's RBI single in the fifth. George Hendricks' RBI single in the seventh cut the Brewers' lead to 3-2, but they got that run back in the bottom of the inning on Robin Yount's home run, then added to their lead in the eighth on back-to-back RBI singles by Charlie Moore and Jim Antner off of Bruce Sutter. The Cardinals staged a late rally in the ninth as Keith Hernandez doubled in a run and George Hendricks singled him in with 2 outs. Bob McClure came in and allowed a single to Darrell Porter, putting the tying run on base. McClure, however, struck out Willie McGee, then retired pinch hitter Gene Tenace to end the game. Robin Yount set a World Series record by recording his second 4-hit game. His first came in Game 1. To this day, Yount remains the only player to have multiple 4-hit games in one World Series. This was the 10th and final World Series game at Milwaukee County Stadium, as well as the final playoff game at Milwaukee County Stadium. Busch Stadium's lack of a dome caused 2 delays that totaled over 2.5 hours. The Cardinals staved off elimination with a blowout win. In the second, Dane Ior doubled with 2 outs off of Don Sutton and scored on an error on Willie McGee's ground ball. Tom Hare's double then made it 2-0 Cardinals. In the fourth, Darrell Porter hit a 2-run home run, then Ior tripled and scored on Hare's ground out. Keith Hernandez's 2-run home run in the fifth made it 7-0 and knocked Sutton out of the game. In the sixth, Ior hit a leadoff double, moved to third on a wild pitch by Doc Medic, and scored on McGee's single. A single and walk loaded the bases with 2 outs before Hernandez's single scored 2, Hendricks' single scored another, and an error on Porter's ground ball scored 2 more. The Brewers avoided a shutout in the ninth when Jim Gantner, who doubled to lead off the inning, scored on Glenn Brummer's wild pitch. Dane Iorg had 2 doubles and a triple as rookie John Stupor went the distance, helped by the rain delays, scattering 4 hits. Joaquin Andujar and Pete Vukovich opposed each other once again, both of whom were pitching hurt. Andujar was still not at full mobility after the line drive he had taken off the kneecap in Game 3, while Vukovich was suffering from severe shoulder pain, which would be diagnosed the following spring as a torn rotator cuff. The game was scoreless until the bottom of the fourth when the Cardinals scored first on a Lonnie Smith RBI single. Ben Oglivie tied it for the Brew Crew in the fifth with a homer, and they took a 3-1 lead in the sixth when Jim Antner scored on an error and Cecil Cooper hit a sacrifice fly. But in the bottom of the sixth, Vukovich began to run into trouble. With 1 out, Ozzie Smith singled and Lonnie Smith doubled him to third. Brewers manager Harvey Kuhn then pulled Vukovich in favor of Bob McClure, who walked pinch hitter Gene Tenace to load the bases. Keith Hernandez then tied the game with a 2-run single. George Hendrick then gave the Cardinals the lead with an RBI single. The Cardinals punctuated the scoring with 2 runs in the eighth on RBI singles by series MVP Darrell Porter and Steve Runn. Andujar pitched 7 strong innings. After recording the final out of the seventh on Gantner, the 2 men nearly came to blows after Gantner did not take kindly to Andujar's gesture of exuberance, and home plate umpire Lee Weir had to step between them and corral Andujar towards the dugout to prevent a fist fight. Manager Herzog, concerned that his notoriously loose cannon starter would allow himself to get rattled after the incident, then turned to closer Bruce Sutter for a 2-inning save, his second save of the series. To date, this is the Brewers' only World Series appearance.